So in this video, I am super excited to talk about how I got into The Legend of Zelda, because this has been a video that I've been wanting to make on the channel for so long, because I want to make sure that I go through every single one of my favorite gaming franchises and just talking about how I got into those series. So I am super excited to share my story with you guys, and I'm going to be talking about various things when it comes to this video. Like, I'm going to be talking about my first experience with The Legend of Zelda. I'm going to be talking about my favorite games, what hooked me into The Legend of Zelda overall, and just sharing with you guys like what sort of impact that the series had on my life. So if you guys have any thoughts on The Legend of Zelda that you guys want to share with me, or if you guys have a story of your own that you guys want to share with me when it comes to how you guys got into The Legend of Zelda, be sure to let me know in the comment section down below, because I would absolutely love to hear it. So when it comes to my first Zelda experience, it probably has to be with Twilight Princess, and I believe this was around the time when I got the Wii. Like, I remember I got the Wii maybe a year or two after it came out, and I remember the first Zelda game that I've ever played was Twilight Princess. So no, it wasn't the original Legend of Zelda on the NES, it wasn't Ocarina of Time or Majora's Mask or any other Zelda games that came out before Twilight Princess. Like, Twilight Princess was the very first Zelda game that I've ever played in my life. And what I really liked about that game, honestly, I liked the whole grittiness of the game, because it looked like a very different Zelda game. Because if you look at all the Zelda games that came out before this one, you know, a lot of those Zelda games are very colorful. It didn't really have, like, you know, the same tone as other Zelda games that you've seen before Twilight Princess came out. So that's what I really loved about it, because it just felt very different. And around that time, you know, especially seeing how games evolve over time, Twilight Princess just had that unique look to it. So whenever I looked at the game, I'm like, okay, this game looks pretty cool. I just love playing as Link and traveling through Hyrule to Midna, solving all these different kinds of puzzles. So that was honestly like my first introduction to The Legend of Zelda, and I'm very thankful for that, because if it wasn't for that game overall, I would have never found out what Legend of Zelda was, and I would have never had the opportunity to experience a very good time with the Twilight Princess game, which I will share more thoughts about that later in this video. But that was my overall first experience getting into The Legend of Zelda. And when it comes to what hooked me into The Legend of Zelda franchise, it probably has to be like the exploration throughout the game, because one of the things that I absolutely love when it comes to a lot of games, I love to explore. I love taking my time going through each and every single one of these games to see what I can find. And when it comes to Legend of Zelda, especially when you're playing as Link traveling through the world and you're riding Epona, and you're finding all these different kinds of dungeons, and you're finding these secret areas where you come across like these chests that have heart pieces, or you're going through these different kinds of caves and you're discovering these hidden items, or if you're unlocking a new weapon, or if you're coming across these different kinds of enemies. I just love the whole exploration when it comes to The Legend of Zelda, because that's what got me into a lot of the other games that I play nowadays. Like, when it comes to a game like Horizon, for example, that's an open world game. You play as Aloy and you travel through the world of Horizon, discovering these different kinds of areas throughout the whole world of that game. And if it wasn't for Legend of Zelda, I would have never been introduced into that concept. And also when it comes to puzzles in The Legend of Zelda, even though at times some of them can be pretty tedious, or you might take a little bit to progress throughout the level because maybe you get stuck on one of these puzzles, I would have to say that Legend of Zelda introduced me to a lot of these puzzles that I played in later games. Like when it came to Horizon, if I was trying to progress throughout a certain part of the game, or God of War, when I was trying to travel through that certain area so I can get further in the map and eventually fight the dragon in that game. If you guys remember God of War 2018, when you had to figure out how to progress throughout that level in order to eventually make it to that point where you find that boss. That's what I'm saying. Like, when it comes to these different kinds of puzzles that Legend of Zelda had in these games, especially when it came to the water dungeon, which I know The Legend of Zelda is very famous for when it comes to that, where you had to figure out how to lower the water pressure throughout that map, and you had to figure out exactly how to progress throughout that dungeon so you could eventually find the boss and all these hidden items so you can progress even further into the game. The puzzles, honestly, in my opinion, were always one of the best things about The Legend of Zelda, and it definitely worked your brain so you can think exactly like what sort of decisions you have to make in order to progress throughout that level, because once you progress throughout that certain point of the game, you know, it feels very satisfying that you finally put all that effort into what you were doing to get to where you are now. So it feels earned that you worked really hard to get to that spot. And when it comes to my favorite Legend of Zelda games, I'd probably have to say Ocarina of Time is definitely a favorite, considering like how nostalgic the game is, and also because it's probably my favorite Zelda game ever. Like, I just love Ocarina of Time so much. Like, it's a classic N64 game. That's why I mentioned the whole nostalgia with it. And also, it's just the experience that I had with that game was probably like no other Zelda game ever. Like, yes, Twilight Princess was the game that got me introduced to the whole world of the Legend of Zelda, but Ocarina of Time was on another level. Like, there was just so many things I remember in that game. Like, when it came to a point where I was traveling through the Shadow Temple and I had to deal with those little creatures on the wall trying to drag me and pick me up and just take me to the abyss or whatever that creature was trying to plan on doing with me. Like, I just remember like the whole feel of like when I was in that level, like I felt like, oh my God, like I was walking through like a haunted house or something, because as a kid, I was very cautious with every step I took when I was going through that dungeon. And then of course, you know, you got to look at the whole lore throughout the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. That was also very cool to get all that different kinds of information put into your head, and just exploring the world as like young Link and adult Link. That was a very interesting concept that I really liked that the game did. And of course, you know, the boss battle that you had with normal Ganon and then Beast Ganon, because I remember when you fought Ganon for the first time, you had to like travel through these stairs all the way down, and then you eventually came across Beast Ganon, and that was probably a very memorable boss fight that I can definitely go back and replay it every single time, because I had so much fun fighting Ganon in Ocarina of Time. And then of course, Twilight Princess, like I mentioned earlier, it's my first game into the Legend of Zelda. The whole feel of that game as a whole, it was just very different, and I loved how the game was, because it was a different feel from any other Zelda game that I played before. Even though Ocarina of Time is my favorite Zelda game ever, it had a different feel to it when it came to Twilight Princess, just based on what the game provided us around that time. So those have to be my favorite Zelda games. And the reason why I didn't mention Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom is because I haven't played those Zelda games yet. I do eventually plan on playing them. I have Breath of the Wild on the Switch, so probably sometime around the summer I'll put some time into that so I can play that game and give my thoughts on that. But those are definitely some great Zelda games that I've heard as well, that I wouldn't be surprised if that was included in anybody's list, because I hear nothing but praise when it comes to those two Zelda games. And talking about like how Legend of Zelda impacted my life, like I mentioned earlier, the whole world of exploration, I absolutely loved it, because that's why I love games like Horizon. That's why I love games like God of War. That's why I love games like Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth. That's why I love games like that, because I just love to explore. I love taking 5 to 6 to 7 hours just discovering each part of the game. And if I ever wanted to become somebody who created games and I wanted to make a career out of that, I can always look back at The Legend of Zelda, because it introduced me into that whole concept of those games, solving puzzles and exploring through different dungeons. I can always look back at The Legend of Zelda to really get some good ideas when it comes to structuring a game of my own, because the whole concept of The Legend of Zelda was just so unique and it was just so fun. And I would definitely love to play other games like that, because they're just very addicting, and it's just hard to put the controller down once you start playing that game for hours on end, because you just want to keep playing it over and over and over again and never put the controller down. But overall, that's my thoughts on how I got into The Legend of Zelda. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like, I had a lot of fun sharing my story with you guys, because like I mentioned earlier, this has been a video in the making that I've been wanting to do for quite some time. So if you guys have any thoughts on Legend of Zelda when it comes to your favorite dungeons, your favorite soundtrack, because Legend of Zelda has amazing music, favorite boss battles, or just your overall thoughts on Legend of Zelda, be sure to let me know in the comment section down below. And also be sure to let me know a story of your own when it comes to how you guys got into Legend of Zelda as well. Be sure to let me know everything, as I said, in the comment section down below. So as of this moment, we are currently on the road to 300 subscribers. So if you guys are interested in content like video games like we talked about today, or cartoons, movies, TV shows, or different horror franchises out there, if you guys are interested in that sort of content, because I talk about all of that, be sure to like and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. And if you guys want to follow me on my social media and see what I'm doing outside of YouTube, be sure to check out my Twitter, my Instagram, my Facebook page, and my TikTok. All of that is located in the description below. Be sure to click on the bell for notifications so you guys are notified whenever I upload a new video on the channel. But other than that, I hope all of you guys are having a fantastic day, wherever the day may be, if it's the daytime, the nighttime, or the evening. And I'll see you guys in the next video. As always, peace out.